Alright, I think I'm actually sorted now. Oh my gosh. Alright. So, headphones off. Here we go. Alright. It has been just a little while since I've last done this, so excited just to start drawing some letters again. Alright. Actually, what I'm going to do is maybe do something like this. Certainly learned plenty in the last few days, that's for sure. About drawing different styles or doing different ways of this. Currently trying some snapping here, just because I'm not exactly sure how this is going to look. But we'll give it a go. Alright. Looks like my handles are going to snap in all of the places that I don't want them to. But I guess that's the name of the game here. Alright. Interesting. Not terrible, not great. Also wonder if there's anything else I want to include here. I think I do for now. Tough part about having such coarse adjustments is I'm not going to get everything the way I want it. Now I just lost. There we go. Alright. So let's see about snapping here. So one subdivision, I'm going to go with 5 subdivisions and see what that does. Okay, that gives me a little bit more control. I'm not so all over the place here. And one other thing that I can do then, let's get that overshoot in there that I wanted. There we go. Now this is working. Excellent. And then this will just be a matter of figuring out all of my weights and shapes here. Actually, I'm going to cheat a little bit and see what fit curve does to help me out. Looks like that can kind of center up a little bit better as well. Not too bad. All right. Actually, I'm going to try something a little different here. Just going to see what happens if I just bring this in like such. A little outside my comfort zone there. Beautiful. Maybe something like that. Alright. The magic number I want is, looks like 105 on each side. Not too bad. And I can certainly tell that Speedpunk is absolutely loving what I'm trying to do here right now. Let's see. Maybe something more, a little bit more like that. Kind of tapers in a little bit. One other thing I'm going to do here, maybe just knock that back a little bit as well. I don't think I'm too terribly opposed to something like that. I'm going to toss an N on the other side as well. I'm actually going to tighten this up just a smidge more too. So we'll have something like that, which I think I'm okay with. Yeah, not opposed to that. All right, excellent. Now let's see what this O is going to do to me here. Mostly just doing the best I can to keep things kind of on some kind of grid here. This is a new process for me. I've never sat down and done a full typeface on a grid quite like this before, but I guess we'll see where that kind of goes. Don't think I'm such a fan of how that was working to start. Maybe let's try. Ooh, almost got it. There we go. All right. Let's just give this a little bit of better curve there. That's okay. Yeah, we'll go with that. All right, and then we'll give it a little copy paste here. And I want to go 2 units like that. There we go. Let's just go halfway up on that. Yeah, I think so. Make sure all my points are still aligning. Everybody looks pretty happy there. Do 1 unit of space on each side, and then let's figure out how we're looking here. So it looks like my, yep, I think that'll work. I don't think I'm too opposed to, yeah, that might be too much. Actually, I'm curious going the other way. Maybe even kind of going a little bit further down the fit curve scale kind of gives it a nice little thing going on there. All right, not bad. I'm just going to kind of keep continuing on here. I'll just kind of see where this H goes. So I don't think that's too terrible. Just give it the side bearings of the end for now. Seems to match up pretty well. Excellent. All right. And I think from here, we're going to see what that B, D, P, and Q can do for me. So, I'm going to just grab one element of that. And apologies there, I just kind of keep smashing the microphone with my pen here. So yeah, for those who are watching, either tuned in now or tuned in later, maybe you're still getting your Black Friday haul today, but it has been a while since I've done one of these, and truth be told, I've made numerous attempts just kind of re-recording a series, jumping back in that way, that kind of thing, and I don't know, it was one of those things where I just wasn't happy with anything I was recording, so rather than continue to beat myself up over how I should kind of restart things or get back into the habit of things, I decided, you know what, let's just do a live stream. Because when it comes to a live stream, you just kind of have to grit it and go for it, I guess would be the best way to put it. So here we are. And I just kind of wanted to put together, to use some new tricks of the trade that I've learned. Been enjoying some Cooper Union classes over the past few weeks, so that's been absolutely worth my time. And I think those are ongoing too, so if that is something that you're interested in or it catches your eye, if you're able to do it, highly recommend. As much as I've used this channel to really just kind of be honest about my process and my journey as a type designer, it's rather amazing how much I continue to learn when I jump into one of those classes. Alright, so that's starting to kind of take shape the way I want. Got a little bit of overshoot there. But I think I'm going to bring this all down just a little bit. Yeah, then it doesn't... Yeah, maybe something more like that. Kind of more of that calligraphic style going on. Then I think what I want to do is align these points up a little bit better so get something a little bit more even on both sides. I will say the grid really helps here. There may be a few points here that I've got to adjust one way or the other, but it does get me something pretty cool, so I will take it. Excellent. Yeah, and I still get the kind of that nice shape of the H there. I'm just curious what that's going to do. I think that doesn't, yeah, it didn't move things too much. So we'll just kind of keep that where that's at. I'm just going to throw the H back on there. So yeah, I get kind of a nice complementary shape there. All right. Just kind of adjust these more, maybe try and get that curve along the bottom smoothed out a little bit more, but I'm pretty happy with that to start. So let's take that B and we'll turn it into a Q. There we go. And get that into position. Beautiful. Something I probably should have done ahead of the live stream is adjusted the snapping for this. As I notice, I've got it's a 35 unit pixel that's subdivided 5 times, and it really doesn't click very easily when I want to nudge a pixel one way or the other. So I'll actually do that so it references off of the N. But yeah, so far so good. Something else I'm just going to do here real quick. Just run a row of ends across the top there. I think I have my spacing pretty good, but always good to double check. I'm also using a pretty rough grid too here, so that can make it a little bit challenging as well. But kind of looking down here, keep the bottom row here kind of a little bit blurry. It's effectively a squint test without having to squint. I think I'm okay with that. So we got H, B, and Q. Let's get P and D in there. And I think we can kind of keep that rolling. So what I'm going to do for this is we'll start with the letter D, I think. Just kind of move that out of the way so I can delete some points. And put it back. And then all I'm going to do for the D, actually, I'm going to steal that element, because then I get that little notch there. I don't have to redraw it. So we'll do that, and then we'll just run only the 2 points that I want all the way to the cap height. There we go. And then as far as this goes, if I've got everything set up the way I want, I'm literally just going to copy, paste, flip upside down, and then just nudge them together so the Glyphs auto connects it for me, and we've got a D. All right. Something I'm curious about, because this just would not be a stream for me if I didn't give this a shot here. So I have this shape along the bottom of the B, because that's kind of like with a calligraphy pen how you would do that. What I'm curious about is if I just go through and delete that, make sure I grabbed enough of what I want here to try this, but my thought in my head is that I want to see what happens if I just repeat that but along the top instead. I think I could get by with it if I'm honest. I'm just going to bump that in a little bit more too. I'm going to give that a go and see what I think. I'm not 100% sold on it, but actually a good way to find out kind of where we're sitting, I suppose, would just be to flip it upside down. Okay, make sure I got all my points in the right spot, and then we'll just throw some side bearings in there. And then we'll also make sure that that lines up with where I want. I think it's okay. Let's maybe just kind of throw all of our like items on one line there and see. This also kind of gives me a little bit of a preview of what my X height is going to look like. So I think that'll kind of help me out a little bit too. I'm going for a pretty large X height here. So who knows, I might have to revisit that. And while I'm taking a look at that, I'm just jumping over to the live chat to say hey to Jamie. This is awesome. You've never seen a live type design stream before. Well, I have to be honest. There's some awesome people out there who do these in addition to myself, and I always highly recommend a number of them. Not sure if you've run into Akimbo Black, a friend of mine, and honestly, he does some pretty cool stuff. Way more talent than I've got, I think. A lot of cool things that he's usually got going on in a lot of his typefaces. But yeah, I'm excited just seeing more of this kind of content on YouTube, and actually Twitch is another great place as well. It's been fun over the last year or so, just kind of seeing more and more people kind of test the waters a little bit, start sharing their own process and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, great to see you in the chat there. So I'm just kind of buzzing through some of the easy letters here because really don't have much to say about the L and the I. I am making these rather technically perfect, which I think for the moment here works for me. Something I should continue doing is just kind of jumping back and seeing how some of this is looking. My thought process here is that that this would be read at smaller sizes. I may even consider more space between the letters. Ronan, hello. Santo Domingo. That sounds like a lovely place. I am actually, I know a number of people have always known me from Wisconsin, but part of the reason the channel's been on hiatus is that I'm in a little bit of a warmer climate myself, now in Silicon Valley. So it's been kind of exciting. All right. Just kind of keep moving along here. The thing I love about lowercase is it just seems like you kind of buzz through a lot of this stuff pretty quickly, which is a lot of fun. It gives me a little bit of confidence and kind of some instant gratification as I go through and get some of these letters built out. Big fan of your work. Yes, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. It's always fun seeing folks jump in with comments like that. My big question, as a fan, has this inspired you to create your own, if you aren't already? Because that's the other part, is it's fun seeing people, in the comments that they're enjoying this. But I've always wondered, has it inspired you, if you haven't already, to give it a go? That's something that I enjoy seeing. Looks like I've got 6 large grids of space on each side there, so that seems to be doing all right. Worth noting, I did narrow up the inner space of the N or of the M here, so this isn't a direct copy of the N. Because I don't need that M to go too wide, I don't think. And then again, just stealing the side bearings off of it. For something like the U, let's see what we can do with that. Usually, I want this, I start with an upside down N. Oops. As I get out of position here. But what I wanted to do was maybe I just kind of do one of these things. Because I'm inclined to kind of break my grid just a little bit. I don't want to do it too much, but maybe by like not quite that much. Maybe like something like that, or a little more. I don't think it needs to change too much, but just something a little bit narrower there just to kind of keep things visually looking the same. I'm kind of jumping through some visual trickery here. So if you have any questions, if you see me doing something you're wondering why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, just feel free to jump in and ask. I will do my best to explain what I'm doing here. Although, as I might joke, sometimes I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. But I think that's also kind of type design in a nutshell too. You get a few good ideas for a couple of letters, and then just do your best to figure it out from there, right? An Arabic calligrapher and type designer. That sounds really fascinating. I've read a few books on Arabic, the writing system, and yeah, it's so much fun. I think there's even a couple of Instagrammers that I follow. It's just so beautiful just to sit and watch them, write things out. I don't even know what they're writing. It might be a recipe for all I know, but it's a very beautiful language and just letters too. Yeah, that's awesome though. And get the C to cooperate, but I think kind of close this off a little bit more than I maybe wanted to. Let's see, what can I do here? I wonder for giggles here. Let me try something like Futura. I don't know, does that work? I don't have any, so I can't spell cone. Guess that'll be the next one on my list. Yeah, I wonder, let's see here. So we'll have to kind of bring that out a little bit, and I'll worry about that super sharp point in a minute. But what I want to work out here is just kind of the overall width of the letter, because right now next to that, it looks a little bit wonky. Maybe something like that. I'm going to also kind of do a dirty trick here. I know you're not supposed to bring the points in like that, but that'll just be our little secret. I don't have a happy little bush, as Bob Ross would say, or a happy little tree that I can hide, so I just commit crimes with Bezier curves instead, I guess. Alright. I'm just going to bring that down a little bit more. I think that's looking a little bit better. Yeah, maybe not. Going back and forth on the curve of the C there. think that's starting to look a little bit better. And then for the side bearings, I'm gonna maybe try that. It's kind of tough to see. Where do I go with something narrower? Maybe I go with something narrower because I got that open space there. I think that'll work. Yeah, good point, Jamie. It's a friend of mine speaks Tamil as his native language, and he's been encouraging me to learn that. And yeah, it really slows down how you like have to think about everything and learn about a language, especially if you're not familiar with it. There's a number of friends I have that work on multilingual scripts with global character sets and what have you, and I'm always just blown away that people can do that kind of stuff, that your brain can change gears from one language to the next, or one script to the next. It's pretty fun to watch. I really wish more of them would do live streams, because I think that would just be so cool to see, just watching somebody at work, going back and forth and determining how you get a letter in one language to look like it kind of belongs, or it's related to something totally different. And yeah, Jamie, I always like to say I'm a kind of a typeface cheerleader, or a type designer cheerleader. So I always encourage people that designing a typeface is always a good idea. And I think honestly now too, it's such a good time to get in and learn how to do this kind of stuff. There's a lot of great tutorials out there, a lot of amazing people sharing content. Aside from myself, people that have just tons and tons of experience doing this kind of stuff, working in the industry, what have you. It's just so cool to see so many of them just sharing what they know. Even if you have a favorite type designer, sometimes it might offer a glimpse into their own process. So the next time you see a typeface from them, it gives you that extra bit of appreciation, knowing what their process was and what kind of work that they put into it. I think the thing that interested me the most when I started designing, like actually sitting down and designing a typeface, was how much I had built it up in my head. And I know that's not to take away or say that it isn't a lot of work. It is, but I think I just expected such a lengthier, more difficult process. And I remember I started drawing out a few letters, and was pleasantly surprised at how quickly I was able just to kind of pick things up and get something serviceable that I could just type out a few words with. And it was just enough excitement that it kind of carried me to keep going with it. Ooh, yeah, Rodin. Losing files of any sort, but especially if it's your first typeface, man, my gut would have been in my throat. That would have not been a fun experience, but I'm glad you found it. Having done a number of design projects over the years, and particularly when I was in school too, which is probably worth noting, I had a teacher who was very big on saving our work. And I mean, truth be told, this was probably close to 15 years ago now, since I was in school, I guess, to kind of date myself a little bit. I remember the computers we had in our computer labs weren't always the greatest. They got the job done, so there was no complaints. But like every so often, as we were in class, we'd just hear this shout out, "Save your work," and it always kind of stuck with me a little bit. Oddly, that was also the same class that the hard drive that I used to keep my work on also decided it was going to go kaput, and I ended up, I think, losing a few projects out of that class, which would have been nice to keep. So my heart always goes out when I hear that people have lost work or a file corrupted or something like that. Yeah, there's you kind of ran into the same problem I did, Jamie, with typeface resources, and I remember even up to a couple years ago, it wasn't a whole lot out there. The one that I'd probably recommend now, Lin Yoon has one. I think she just calls it Type Design Class. I think it's even like typedesignclass.com or something like that, or course class. I forget which one it is. I'm sure you can Google it. Anyway, I mean, she's done, amazing work outside of doing the class. And I think it was a Kickstarter project as well, but she really goes through the process really well. And I think the big thing for me was just learning to look at a group of letters or an alphabet and kind of pick my way through and learn which letters you can take and make a letter out of it. So, learning about the control characters, which for me anyway is cap O, cap H, lowercase n, and lowercase o, and then just learning how you can take those bits and pieces of those letters and start doing things like I've been doing here, where you create an H or a U or a B, D, P, or Q. And it's kind of interesting because as you start to kind of build this arsenal of bits and pieces of letter forms and everything else, it actually gets easier and a little bit quicker the more you go through this, which is really encouraging, especially for someone starting out, I think. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. I know there's a couple other folks as well that I'm not going to ruin their surprises, but I've seen a few classes start to make their way out of beta testing and things of that nature. So I know too, especially if you're looking maybe into doing something like in 2022, you're going to have a lot of good options, I think. There's a lot of really awesome people that are putting their knowledge out there, so should be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see kind of where people take that kind of stuff and what they're able to create with these different classes. So, and I'll just add, I am not one of the people. I plan on just continuing with the YouTube channel. I'm perfectly okay with that, but yeah, it's so much fun seeing all these other projects. All right. So one of the things I'm trying to do here is just trying to see what kind of interesting shapes that I can kind of make with this curve here. Just something that looks kind of nice, has a pleasant curve to it. I mean, it does seem a little bit like just, here's a 90-degree angle kind of thing, but I guess everything else has kind of been adhering to a grid so far too, so don't mind just kind of continuing with that. One thing I'm going to do here for this side bearing is, and why I love glyphs, is I can do math in my little side bearing things here. So I'm actually just going to set that side bearing to 0, and my thought is that I've got anything, maybe, I guess the Q doesn't really, was the one I was thinking of when I was doing this, but sometimes rather than trying to kern things closer together. Sometimes I'll do the opposite and kern things apart instead, because it just means fewer kerning elements. All right. Appreciate the kind comments, Jamie. Yeah, and honestly, now that things have kind of settled back down a little bit for me from moving to Type Weekend and all this other kind of stuff, really hoping that I can start getting some more content back out there as well. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence, and I'm open to suggestions if I want to kind of pick up where I left off with some of the series that I had going on, or if it's just better to kind of do a clean slate. Because kind of my thought is, while I wasn't recording anything, I was still drawing letters, learning about different things. So it's kind of the classic problem where I've got all of this new knowledge and all these old projects that I think they could be wonderful to complete or finish, but at the same time, I just feel like I've learned so much. I just want to start over now. So I don't know. That just, it feels like the classic challenge of any designer that's learning how to do things. That you learn so much, or you go halfway through the process, even if it's not type, if it's learning how to design a logo or something like that, and you just learn so much halfway through the process that you just feel like you have to start over again. I feel like that's kind of where I'm at. Actually, as I'm kind of looking at things here too, maybe just might challenge myself a little bit and see if we can do a double story A. I think that would be fun. And actually, I think I'm actually going to use the bottom of the E instead. So a trick I've learned if you're going to do a double story A is that there's some designers out there, including the one you're watching, that rather than doing something like using the C and just reversing it, which is what you'll see me do in a lot of older videos on the channel here, kind of the new method that I've learned is some designers actually like to flip the E upside down and just work from there, which is one way to do it. The way I'm doing it is kind of a mixed approach, where I've got kind of this connection down here that I would get with like the corner of the D, the bottom right corner of the D, and then I just try and work everything else into the shape that I want. So that's what we're going to try and do. And if I've got everything planned out, at least the way it looks in my mind, we should get a serviceable double story A out of this. But we'll see. And really all I'm doing to start here is I'm just trying to get points kind of, in this case, at the very, like the maximum point of the curve, the apex of the curve here. I do try and keep my points centered between the two Bezier handles the best that I can. And then the other thing that I'm looking at is the actual weight of the line here. And what's helpful, because I purposely chose to do a coarser grid here, it's a little bit easier to kind of keep these lines in a uniform width. But we were talking about calligraphy in the chat, and one of the things that I'm trying to keep in mind is how a calligrapher would would write an A, because a number of, or I should say a lot of how we design type when it comes to letters is based on how calligraphers would have written this kind of stuff. So there are some type design classes out there that have taken in the past. I think Troy Leinster's in Cooper Union Principles of Typeface Design is an excellent example, at least personally, that I can personally vouch for. And one of the things that you do in his class to start is by learning some calligraphy. And I mean, he does an amazing job teaching in the class, but it was really helpful because you think about, like, on some of these letters, what's thick and what's thin, and just kind of learning how calligraphers used to go about it made it very helpful. So that as you go here, you kind of have an idea of what needs to go where, or how, or things like that. I think what I'm going to do for the A2, just to kind of create some a bit of a relation here. So I've got the N that curves into the stem here, and yeah, at least as one teacher taught me, they call it kind of that stabbing connection. And I think what I'm going to do, because I'm not going to get that deep of an angle, it's going to kind of go more perpendicular, but I want to see if I can maybe get something to that effect here. I was kind of interested if kind of a curve, I've seen this on a few things now, which was kind of fun, where it just kind of goes from a curve to a straight, just kind of goes and kind of cuts in straight, including the sound effect. So I'm just trying to see, I've got a nice kind of curve up here. I think all of this needs to go more. Something like that, perhaps. And then kind of straighten it out. So I'm just kind of worrying about the top, sorry, the bottom. I'm not so concerned about that top line at the moment. Let me actually just bring this out a little bit. So I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but I'm just kind of looking at how this bottom curves around here, which looks pretty well. The other thing I think I'm going to do, so we're going to switch the type of point that we're using there. But maybe it does something like that. I think that maybe looks a little too aggressive though. So my next thought is if I kind of get more of a, if it just kind of keeps wrapping around and kind of curves in a little bit, so maybe does something more like that. One of the other rules that I'm breaking doing this is my my Bezier handles will no longer be 90 degrees, but for science, I'm willing to give it a try. So maybe do something like that. I will have to bring this kind of back out there-ish. Actually, I think that one could kind of... The other thing that I'm trying to do here is to keep these two handles parallel then if I'm going to do something like this. And another thing that I might consider in something like this is maybe even giving this line a little bit of a curve so it isn't going to be perfectly straight, so it doesn't look too mechanical. So we'll see. Maybe there's kind of something fun there, kind of with that angled point rather than just having it be a sharp point. But if I do work that in, then that's another element that I have to consider. And if there's another spot in a letter somewhere that would be appropriate to use that. Something I'll have to keep in mind. Just gonna bring this down a little bit. So by doing that, it does kind of introduce that curve, but it's not a very convincing one. Maybe that's a little bit more convincing. Thing too, like I said a little bit earlier in the stream, is that I'm kind of thinking this is going to be for smaller sizes, maybe like a text size or something like that. So the other thing that I'm trying to keep in mind is that I'm really not going to get too carried away with detail here, because a good chunk of it won't be seen, unless of course I, for whatever reason, decided to use it at a much larger size. But if I kind of zoom back a little bit, I'm at least kind of getting that vibe, that overall shape that I'm looking for. I'm going to keep this here now, that flat spot there for now, even though I really don't have anywhere else that I'm using it. And I might just kind of straighten that out for the time being as well. So I am kind of doing some goofy stuff there, but we'll just kind of see how that goes. I also rely on the fit curve tool a lot, just to kind of keep my curves kind of in check with each other. We'll get the side bearings kind of back in place. Yeah, it's I've kind of seen this, and I've noticed it's been a trend with some other popular typefaces lately, where they kind of have that, well, you know, maybe the inner shapes are curved, or they have curves, and then kind of that outer shape, you know, tends to be more of a flat spot, or maybe it looks more geometrical or chiseled, even. I feel like that was like a Dwiggins thing, I think, is where somebody got that from, if I recall right. I'm probably not recalling right, but yeah, I just thought it was kind of fun, something a little bit different. And, you know, as we're talking about that calligraphic style, you know, you do see that in some of those letters, so who knows, maybe there's something there. But I definitely like kind of that vibe it gives everything. Oh yes, the relationship between the characters. Yeah, it's kind of something that I'm always keeping in the back of my mind when I'm designing this. You know, not necessarily like I'm designing an N and thinking about how that's going to look like an H right away, but at least kind of my experiences, I would sum it up with a little bit of practice. I've done that thing where you draw something that looks really, really awesome, and you're really, really excited about it, and then you just totally get gutted when you go on to the next letter and realize that that something just drastically doesn't work, and you gotta reconsider what you just drew. So yeah, truthfully, it's a little bit of trial and error. But after a while, you're just like, okay, I know that if I draw an N this way, that means I'm going to be drawing the H a certain way, or doing something with maybe another letter if I'm taking parts from it. So, all right. I think I've certainly put a good amount of time into the A. Side bearings don't want to be very cooperative, but that's okay. Feels like it's, let's see, O was 35, N was 70. That is not what I wanted. I think what I want, I think 8%. There we go. 42. No, need more than that. Or is it the end that I would... Everybody in the world is learning on the live stream why I did not excel in math right now. That's kind of what I was aiming for. So between 35 and 70, which I suppose is 12.5. But the reason that I'm doing it this way is rather than just typing in the number, whatever that is, I think that's like 47 or something like that. I'm trying to do it as a percentage of the n side bearings so that at least at this early stage, if I go back and decide that I want this overall spaced looser or tighter, I only have to go back to my control characters, my N and my O in this case. If I update those side bearings, because all my other side bearings are using those numbers as references and then just doing math off of it, everything auto updates, and it's, in my opinion, one of the most amazing shortcuts in glyphs, especially when I'm starting out designing letters, because if I change my mind about something, I only have to go back and change up to 4 numbers, and then this just figures everything out for me. So I like to work smarter, not harder, and that's one good example of that. So with that, I think I've spent enough time on the A. I'm just trying to think one more that I could do. Not that any letter really references it necessarily, at least directly, but it's a crowd pleaser for the few people that are on the stream tonight. Let's go through and do an S because that'd be fun. So for an S, I'm going to use the C to start. I'm not going to worry about side bearings right now. And what I'm going to do is actually chop even more of it off. And I'm going to throw my O in the background here, just as something to kind of reference. Let's see. So maybe something like that. I'm actually going to throw the N in there as well, because I actually want this a little bit wider. See how that starts. So what I'm going to do, we're just going to draw a few points to start here. Something like that. And then in the process realize that I put them in the wrong spot. Try this again. Let's see here. All right. So we want a point there. I'm going to do a point there. There we go. Now I'm in the right direction here. And then that goes around that way. So just going to roughly... There's going to be a lot of repositioning on this, but that's a very, well, a very different looking S to start, but we'll get this looking a lot better here. So similar to the a good chunk of this is just going to be, number one, making sure that these snap to the grid. And then for now, I'm just going to even out only those. And then I'm going to start kind of showing off my favorite trick here. So what that is, get these positioned in nicely. All right. And then I'm going to just kind of nudge that out a little bit more. So the first thing I'm going to do is I made the top just a little bit narrower, and then I'm just kind of lining it up over the bottom part of my S here. So from this point on this side to this point on this side, looks like I've got about, let's see, 2 and 3 units on one side respectively. So because we're working on a grid and I can make it all nice and neat, we're gonna make everything line up. So the top of the S is 6 of these mini units narrower than the bottom. So that gives it its the direction that's how we know it's going to be right side up or upside down. And then all I'm going to do for the spine here is I'm just creating some curves just kind of from these edges here. I'm not going to worry about anything in the middle quite yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to then start to position these points. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to kind of center that up. And then this is just a story of playing with these two here. So the first thing that I notice is that it kind of has a forward lean to it, which I really don't want. So I might consider doing something like that. So it kind of leans back a little bit. A lot of this is just kind of playing let's make a deal with all these different points here. Just kind of determining where and how they fit. And a lot of what I'm doing here is just going through, and as I'm looking at this curve, for example, the two things I'm looking at is that my point is right at that apex of that curve, and then my two Bezier handles on each side are as even as I can get them. Coming around here, you know, again, making sure that this point is at the apex of this curve. I am not making sure these 2 points are even because this longer handle here is what's helping determine the shape of the spine. So that is a rule that I am purposely breaking right now. And then down here, we're just kind of doing a little bit more of the same. The other thing that I'm going to consider here is that I want a little bit more space down here than I do up here. So I've got a little bit of work to figure out what that looks like. So we'll kind of get these positioned somewhat right. May even kind of narrow up some of these too, so it's got a little bit more of a rounder shape to it. But again, so it's a lot of things to keep going on in your mind. You know, keeping the line space, or sorry, the line weight uniform, making sure all these points are in the right spot. In my opinion anyway, it really isn't that the S is hard to draw, it's just hard to keep all of these different things, to keep track of them all. It's just kind of easy for it to go off the rails a little bit. So, but as you see, it's starting to take shape. It's just a lot of nudging, a lot of playing kind of let's make a deal with your own typeface and your own work. And then the other thing that I run into that we'll deal with in just a sec here is I'm going to come back and then triple check my width, because I have a feeling I might be off just a little bit on the width, but we'll see kind of how all that adds up. The other thing too is that most of the weight of the S should be through the spine, not the top and the bottom. I mean, unless you're going for a reverse contrast typeface, but I'm not doing that here, so we'll just kind of keep that moving along. I'm going to use the O for my spacing here. You can just kind of bring that out a little bit more too. So already I'm just kind of having second thoughts on It may be that I'm just kind of pushing it so that it's kind of almost like it's leaning back a little bit, but by making it lean back, it looks like it's the right side up. I think I'm even going to kind of relax the spine a little bit more there. So it seems like a pretty good attempt. I think what I'm going to do is take all of these, just kind of move it up, and then all I'm doing is I'm just kind of flipping it upside down. And as I just kind of flip it back and forth, it looks pretty obvious, at least to my eye, that this has more space than this. I suppose what I could do just to totally be sure. So I just copied, pasted, flipped it upside down, so I don't think it looks too terrible. Maybe I even relax the spine a little bit more. But it's mostly just nudging points around till you feel like you have a good handle on it. And then again, just making sure that your curves look smooth as well. And I probably could spend all night nudging these around, but for the sake of keeping this moving along, because I think this is probably my last letter too. But the last thing I usually do for this is then, if let's just say I'm kind of happy with this, which, I mean, truthfully, I'm not totally upset with how this looks either, but let's say I was just really happy with this. So what I'll do then, once I'm done kind of nudging all these different points and handles and everything else around, is I'll come back and I'll add a couple more points along the actual spine. And then basically what this does is this kind of allows me to dial that shape of the spine in a little bit more. If I need to add weight in one space or another, I can go ahead and do something like that. And basically this kind of allows me to kind of fine tune and tweak all of that stuff that I did to get it to this point. So if I want to have more of an angle, kind of a nice straight flat angle through here, because the thing is when I don't have these points, it's easy to kind of give more of this flowy, curvy feel to it. But I think something like that works just a tiny bit nicer. And then the last thing, maybe just kind of nudge this up. See what that does. I don't think I want it to go like that. But yeah, we'll just kind of feather some of those pieces into place. This is where I might go back and hit it with my Fit Curve tool. Sometimes it gets a little bit cranky, which it is. So for something like that, I'm just going to go through and select the pieces that I really just want to be sure that are good. I mean, I'll probably continue working on this off stream a little bit more, just to get kind of some of these pieces where I want them, but in effect that's how I make the S. So I don't think that's too bad. The other thing that I'm going to do is just to kind of put a wrap here. I'm going to take the bottom curve here. We're just going to kind of maybe bring that up a little bit more so it mimics the top of the S a little bit better. I think something like that just looks a little bit nicer. Just kind of gives a nice finishing touch. So yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. It's a good start. It's probably one of those things where I would stare at it for some time before I really would tell you that I'm happy with it. But anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in and watching tonight. Hopefully your Black Friday was a good day. Hopefully you scored on some awesome things. It's been fun just kind of hearing from friends, just seeing all the different deals and what have you that they got. But yeah, I'm like I said earlier in the stream, I'm not exactly sure if I'll be picking up any of the old series, or if maybe we just go ahead and do something new. Just kind of go with the fresh start method. Like I've said, I've learned quite a bit since the last episode, so we'll see where that goes. Whether you're catching the end of the stream here or you're hitting the comment section afterwards, yeah, just feel free to send me a note and let me know your thoughts. If you want to see me do something in particular, if you want to see me use a particular program, I'm always trying different software out. I usually come back to Glyphs just because it's what I primarily work in. But yeah, it's I think that's going to be a wrap on everything. So as always, thanks so much for watching.